Fabulous. Thank you. I first of all would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to join you and tell you about what we are doing at the Molecular Sciences Software Institute. This is an institute that focuses on the computational molecular sciences community. This is a very broad scientific domain. It includes my personal domain, quantum chemistry, computational materials science, and also large-scale biomolecular simulation. This is a very old field in a lot of ways, going all the way back to the beginning of computational science, and it's widely regarded now as a full partner with experiment. And it's the folks in this field have been responsible for a lot of amazing solved problems across a wide range of topics, development of new drugs and pharmaceuticals, understanding functionalities of biological macromolecules, advances in energy technology, and so on. And at the heart of our community is the central tools of the computational molecular sciences community is a large number of community codes. I would say hundreds of community codes. And this is just a sampling of a few of the codes that we work with. Everybody's got to have a logo. So here's some of the logos anyway in the field. These codes really represent many decades of development, right? In aggregate, all of the codes together, many decades of development. Some individual codes have been around for many decades. And the human power in this really is developed by thousands of programmers, and there's a user base on the order of hundreds of thousands globally. We face a lot of challenges in the computational molecular sciences community, similar to many of the challenges you face. We have complex codes, and some of them have been around for a very long time. So again, speaking in aggregate, these molecular sciences programs contain millions of lines of handwritten code, and they require hundreds of programmers to develop and maintain them. Most of those programmers, by the way, are graduate students and postdocs in research and academic research groups. Not all. Some are software engineers in commercial organizations. These codes have a huge amount of language diversity. Every variant of Fortran is absolutely represented, and then some. Your favorite C varieties, C++ standards, lots of scripting languages. I sometimes worry that there might actually be one of the community codes out there that could contain every single one of these in a single package. There's also a lot of algorithmic diversity. Because we're not trying to solve just one single scientific problem, we've got a huge array. You can really find every algorithmic paradigm in computational molecular sciences packages. And they've evolved in a very ad hoc manner over decades, which is natural because we're trying to solve very intricate scientific problems. And sometimes you don't know how to go about that, how to build the code until you've actually gone through and done it once, right? That's part of the problem solving process. We have another challenge of very rapidly changing computer hardware, disruptive changes in computer hardware. There's no such thing as a serial computer anymore, right? Everything is multi and many core architectured. And as we make further advances and reduced power solutions become more important at exascale, error recovery and checkpointing and such at the software level are going to be extremely important, but almost no computational molecular science codes take this into consideration. And it's going to get more and more difficult. There's also another challenge in the education culture, in the scientific education culture. In chemistry and physics, undergraduate programs typically require no formal training in software development or programming. It's usually an optional thing, right? And when you get to the graduate level, there's no fix for this, right? The graduate programs typically require minimal coursework between the bachelor's degree and the PhD. And in chemistry, I can speak to this a bit. Our best students, between the bachelor's and the PhD, our best students typically take only about 4 lecture courses. Everything else is focused on research efforts. And they're certainly not taking a software engineering course among those 4. So that means that we have to train our students ourselves, usually within specific groups. And that means that you're not really getting a lot of breadth of knowledge, and sometimes you're hidden from what the modern software engineering best practices are. It's also difficult to bring computer science students to the other side because they often, or typically I should say, lack the knowledge of the scientific domain where we need them to help develop very creative software solutions. And it turns out that it's not really a good approach to convince a computer scientist to collaborate with you by saying, you know, here's my million lines of Fortran code, can you please make it fast for me? They, for some reason, they don't like to get involved in that kind of thing. There's also the question of credit for software, especially in a culture that focuses on peer-reviewed papers. And so you have very much a just get the physics working kind of approach to the development of software. So the MolSSI is now just over 4 years old, launched by the National Science Foundation in August of 2016. It is headquartered here at Virginia Tech, but it's a joint effort among multiple institutions, Rice, Stony Brook, UC Berkeley, Rutgers, Southern Cal, Iowa State, and the University of Michigan. It's part of the NSF's commitment to the White House's National Strategic Computing Initiative, and it's initially a 5-year project, potentially renewable to 10. So we're looking forward to this renewal process coming up. And the fundamental purpose of the MolSSI really is to serve and enhance the software engineering efforts of our broad field of computational molecular sciences. The MolSSI has multiple components. The heart of the MolSSI is a team of software engineering experts we refer to as software scientists. Some of these people are newly minted PhDs, others are more well established. Most of the team comes from one of the subdomains of molecular sciences, but we also have several who are computer scientists, bona fide computer scientists, and applied mathematicians. Second major component is our software fellows. This is a large number of graduate students and postdocs that we support all over the US in research groups. They're selected by our external advisory board, which we call the Science and Software Advisory Board. Then, of course, there's the board of directors who oversee the activities and provide guidance. Again, our Science and Software Advisory Board, we have representatives from academia, national labs, industry, international folks, and they help to guide us as well to identify the most important software priorities. And then finally, there's our community code partners. We have formal relationships with about 40 computational molecular science software packages. And the developers of these packages work with our team on development of standards, training, infrastructure, and such. So we have 3 major goals that I'll walk through really quickly. The first is to provide the community with software expertise and infrastructure. So our team of software scientists is developing, testing, and deploying infrastructure to help make, for example, make our community codes more interoperable, or to improve their performance on certain computing platforms. There's a wide range of needs that only an organization of the size and nature of the MolSSI could actually carry out. Second goal focuses on education and training. We want to be, and in many ways already are, an education nexus for the worldwide computational molecular sciences community. We have summer schools, targeted workshops, undergraduate training programs, many online resources and such to provide students out there with a much more modern set of programming skills. And then we even reach out into computer science domain to try to find applications that are interdisciplinary. The third major goal is community engagement and leadership. We want to facilitate the community's efforts to develop standards for interoperability, data and code standards. But of course, this has to be a grassroots approach, right? It's got to be a bottom-up approach, because one thing I've learned is that the fastest way to get an academic to ignore you is to tell them what to do. And so we've got to bring them together to help them decide what these standards need to be. So a little bit more detail, our team of software scientists, we now have 12 on board. They've got a lot of different responsibilities. They're developing the software frameworks that I talked about. They really are engaging with so many different research groups and community code developers. They serve as mentors for our software fellows that we support all over the US. And then we have a lot of collaborative partnerships, and about half the resources of the MolSSI go to support this team. Here's our current team. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this gives you a little bit of idea of at least where they're coming from. They really do span the whole space of computational molecular science. I will note particularly Dr. Paul Sachs, who's our lead software scientist. His experience really touches on all areas of computational molecular science. I'll also note in particular Jessica Nash. She's our education lead, and I'll say more about some of her work a little bit later. Just quickly, some examples of our software infrastructure projects so you get an idea of what we're doing. In computational quantum chemistry in particular, we deal with what are called basis sets. So these are basically just for usually Gaussian type function sets that are standardized and well defined for representing wave functions and key operators that occur in molecular quantum mechanics. And we have a basis set exchange that we have overhauled and expanded from what was originally developed by Pacific Northwest. This site gets now over 40,000 unique visitors per month from the domain. And it's really one of our highest impact efforts. QC Archive, this is an open community-driven database infrastructure for collecting quantum chemistry data for data mining and machine learning initiatives. There is SEAM, so the simulation environment for atomistic and molecular modeling. Mark, our previous speaker, was talking about reproducibility, for example. This is part of an effort to try to improve reproducibility in complicated computational molecular sciences calculations. And finally, I'll mention our COVID-19 Molecular Structure and Therapeutics Hub, which we launched in mid-March. This has had quite an impact on the global biomolecular simulation community because it's provided them with a data repository and tool repository for sharing simulation efforts in simulating components of the virus. I'll move quickly in the interest of time. This is the Basisset Exchange that I mentioned that you can go through and select basis sets for individual elements. There's even an API whereby quantum chemistry codes can link directly to the site and grab basis sets on the fly during a calculation. So it's all completely open source. Everything we do is completely open source, of course. And the Basisset Exchange has visitors from all over the world. These are just stats from this past June, for example. The QC Archive I mentioned, QC Archive is actually multiple components that are designed to allow users to carry out high throughput quantum chemical calculations on a very large scale and save the results of those calculations using a standardized schema that we work with the community to develop, such that and store it in a database so that it can be studied later, right? You can do data mining efforts with this later. And in the component of the QC Archive, we can hook multiple community quantum chemistry codes into this. So it allows you to use a wide range of tools. And there is a back-end set of analysis and visualization tools for the data that comes out. I mentioned our COVID-19 Molecular Structure and Therapeutics Hub. This is a little bit more information about that. It's covid.molsi.org. We just learned, this is Wednesday, yesterday, we learned yesterday that the MolSSI is a finalist for a .org impact award from the Public Interest Registry, who manages the .org top level domains. And it's because of the COVID-19 Molecular Structure and Therapeutics Hub. And so this has been a huge effort. I would like to particularly note the effort by MolSSI co-director Teresa Head-Gordon at UC Berkeley, but dozens of organizations around the world have been participating in this and contributing. It's been really heartening to see them all come together. Our software fellows I mentioned before. Right now we support about 35 graduate students and postdocs. Over the course of the program, we've supported more than 70. I think it's 75 total. That we've provided funding for. It's key because there's a big training aspect to this, right? Our software scientists mentor these graduate students and postdocs to bring them up to date on modern software engineering best practices. We run a week-long boot camp for them at the beginning of their fellowship, and we engage with them on a very regular basis throughout. And the fellowships run. There's a 6-month version called the Seed Fellowship and an 18-month version called an Investment Fellowship. And we run competitions for these every 6 months. And almost a third of the MolSSI's resources go to support the software fellowship team. These are some photos of the fellows going back into 2017, and then the most recent ones. Again, we used to run boot camps at the MolSSI headquarters here. Our most recent one, it was a virtual boot camp for obvious reasons, but I hope that we will be able to have more in-person activities with them soon, because it's very wonderful work. There's been a lot of impact from the software fellowship program. These young people have won a lot of different awards and published a lot of papers, and a number have gotten academic positions out of this. And so we're really pleased with the progress that they've made. These are our community code partners so far. We're always looking to add to this list because we want to work with as many developers in our domain as we can. And again, if for those of you who might be familiar with these things, there's a wide range of subfields of computational molecular sciences represented here. It really is almost all of it. And I'll wrap up with education. So I mentioned Jessica Nash. She's our fantastic education lead. She also is engaged in software infrastructure projects. So this is sort of her part-time position within the MolSSI, is running the education program as well. In 2019, she ran 17 events. Most of these events involve multiple of our software scientist team, and many of our software fellows get involved in these because they also enjoy the teaching aspect. We had a big summer school at the Texas Advanced Computing Center in July of 2019. I think that's when the date was. And this is a 10-day summer school. We had more than 50 students in attendance. And for that one, again, 3 of our software fellows participated in the instructional efforts, and almost the whole software scientist team was there. In response to COVID-19, we had to shift a lot of our plans from in-person events to virtual events. And I was thrilled with how quickly the team did this. They really turned on a dime to make this happen. They started, first of all, Jessica arranged multiple webinar series, right? In April, May, and June, she had webinars through those months. And yeah, she hit the registration caps on each of the webinars, and I'll say more about how many were there. She hit the registration caps within about 24 hours, less than 24 hours of announcing them. So the demand for these was really fantastic. And she's been developing and expanding our online materials, online curricula. And this is not only important because of COVID-19, but because we really want to extend our reach. We want to be able to reach well beyond the US, right? We want to reach the global computational molecular sciences community because it really is a global effort. And the more about those webinars, the first one had about 55 and the last one had more than 100. And there were quite a few undergraduates at the last one. So this was a great opportunity also to reach into the undergraduate cohort and have a good impact on their work. These were the instructors for these. I've mentioned Jessica. Professor Ashley Ringer McDonald from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She did a sabbatical with us and worked with Jessica to expand our curriculum. And she's been a real blessing for the MolSSI. And she's a fantastic instructor, fantastic teacher. And I'll also mention, Jay Foley and Dom Serrani have contributed, as well as a number of our software fellows have done a great job. And again, we're trying to reach a global audience for these, and just those webinars suddenly expanded the reach where our workshops would have just really focused primarily on the US. This is the board of directors that I mentioned before. Cecilia at Rice, she's now moved to Berlin, our director for biomolecular simulation and also for international engagement. Robert at Stony Brook is our co-director for parallel computing and emerging technologies. Teresa Head-Gordon is at UC Berkeley is our co-director for laboratory, industrial, and outreach, academic outreach and education. And she was also the lead on the COVID-19 Hub. Shantanu Jha at Rutgers is our co-director for software engineering, the process, middleware, and infrastructure. Anna Krylov at Southern Cal is our co-director for quantum chemistry. Teresa Windus is at Iowa State she's the deputy director of the institute, and she's also co-director for code and data interoperability. And finally, Dominika Zagid at the University of Michigan is co-director for materials science. And just to wrap it up, our highlights, we've got a dozen software scientists. We're actually trying to hire one more for a baker's dozen of software scientists. And we've run more than 25 software workshops. These are non-education workshops that I wasn't able to talk about here, with more than 800 participants. And we've got a lot of virtual workshops coming up. I mentioned our software infrastructure development efforts. I told you a bit about our educational efforts and the impact those are having. And of course, our software fellowship program, of which we're very proud. And finally, the COVID-19 Molecular Structure and Therapeutics Hub. And so I encourage you to keep up with what we're doing at molssi.org. We also have the the requisite Twitter and other social media feeds that you can keep up with us. And of course, we're really grateful to the whole computational molecular sciences community for coming together to make this happen. And of course, the NSF for the generous support. And so thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.